It was very popular a few years ago, and I was included in this group to have a bumper sticker. I didn't actually have the bumper sticker, which said, "I'm going to spend my kid's inheritance." I really believed in my heart of hearts that I would party hardy all all of my senior years in such a way as there wouldn't be. I would work it out to where there would be as little as possible at the end. You can't. You cannot spend it fast. If you have any kind of income at all in your senior years, you cannot spend it fast enough to deprive your children of their inheritance. There's also, I'm going to just keep going for another second here, just because philosophically it's interesting to me, is that the older I get, the more I care about leaving them more. And I don't know
What's
what
wrong with
that
you,
is.
Randy?
I don't know. Maybe I like them better now. They're no longer teenagers. I don't know. So, anyway, Cern Basher and I tripped across an article a while back, which Cern now has uh, created much more illumination than this article provided initially. And it's the first in a series that we will be doing on financial planning. Do I have that all right, Cern?
Yes, this article has caused me great suffering, Randy. So thank you for sharing
Suffering,
it with me.
suffering.
And it's a very innocuous article on the surface, but you start to pick it apart, and there's all kinds of things, all kinds of rabbit holes to go down here.
Okay, all right.
But I think people will find this helpful on some level, hopefully.
Yeah, I think almost everybody in my listening audience, if they have, they're going to have to dispose of some income through inheritance, or I'm sorry, some assets through inheritance, whether that's gifting to charity or whether that's letting the state just take it all. I mean, one way or the other, there's assets at the end, and they're going to have to go someplace,
Yeah, I guess you could always take the approach that it's not your problem. You're not going to be around to deal with it.
right?
And some
That's
people do that.
that's one way.
As a final gift to the family, here's a complicated mess. It's yours to figure out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually what got me started on my journey of, setting up a family trust was just eliminating the complications because
Mm.
if you leave it, even if you just leave it in a will, it's super complicated.
I guess it's one, final way to get back at your kids and say, okay, here's the last problem for you to solve. It's the mess that I made my entire life. Yeah. Well, so let's get started.
Okay.
And of course, this disclaimer applies, and even more so. Not
Yeah,
only is this not investment advice, this is not tax advice, and it is most certainly not legal advice.
you got it. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to talk about things that touch on all this stuff, but please, there's so much nuance to these topics. The complexity is kind of off the charts.
Right.
All right. All right, here's the article. Randy sends me this article and says, "Cern, let's do a show about something like this." And it's taken me a month, I think, to work through some of the issues with this. And again, this show is just going to scratch the surface on this. This is an article, I think, from Apple News, Randy,
Yes, I believe so.
that you sent me. Title is "Don't Bury Your Kids in Taxes: How to Position Your Investments to Help Create More Wealth for Them." All right, and I'll just read a couple of highlights from the article. It says, to minimize your heirs' tax burden, you need to focus on strategically aligning your investment account types and assets with your estate plan, as well as pay attention to the potential impact of R&Ds. That sounds easy enough, right?
Right. Super simple.
Easily done. Yeah. Um, so retirement planning isn't complete without factoring in the people most important to you. Um, many people fail to review their investment accounts or the future tax impact. And the lack of oversight can be damaging to your beneficiaries. So they talk about strategic decisions such as asset location and account types can help preserve more wealth, and so on. And then they've got some examples of different account types: traditional retirement accounts, Roth IRAs, taxable brokerage accounts, and real estate, and life insurance, which actually we're going to completely avoid today in this topic because that's a much deeper topic. And then they talk about, as a headline here, investment and planning strategies for your 50s and 60s. That's a whole nother topic. So if this article is boring you, then there's plenty of ways to click off and go further down the rabbit hole. But anyway, they say here, a common mistake people make is not adjusting their asset allocations as they approach retirement. So that's a whole different matter. And then the most overlooked part of legacy planning process involves RMDs. Again, a whole different matter.
R&D, we need to define R&D.
Required minimum distributions. Thank you. Yeah. For retirement accounts, you are required to take money out at a certain point in your life. It's based on your life expectancy according to the government.
Which we did an entire video on about 3 weeks ago.
That's right. And the current age at which you're required to start doing that is currently 73. And so they're talking about proactively managing accounts ahead of RMDs and so on. So they're touching on a lot of different topics here. And of course, like all these mainstream media articles never really give you any meat to work with. And they really can't, because this topic is actually so complicated and so in depth that they couldn't do it here and have anybody read the article. They also talk about asset location, the idea of placing high growth investments that generate significant capital gains in taxable accounts to leverage the step up at basis at death.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at least one thing that they're thinking about, which is good. Most people are familiar with asset allocation, right? The mix of stocks and bonds and real estate and cash.
Right.
A lot of people do not give any thought to asset location.
Right.
We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then, of course, the idea of placing investments that generate ordinary income in tax deferred accounts or tax-free accounts, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, this article is great. It's very straightforward, very simple, but yet when you really begin to think about some of these things, it opens up all kinds of different issues in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They go on finally to talk about Roth conversions,
Mm-hmm.
strategic gifting.
Roth conversions, we also did an entire video on that about a couple, 3 months ago.
Yeah. So, you get to the end of this article and you're sort of like, well, now what? Or people that read this probably just click off into some other, TikTok video to calm their mind down after reading this, because this is too much here. But it's nice in the sense it touches on these ideas, and hopefully it gets some people to think about some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of start with some basics. And I used my AI friend at Gemini to help me with some of these illustrations. They're not perfect, but it does a better job than I could if I was illustrating, and also a heck of a lot faster. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So here's an example here. So why do we save to retirement accounts in the first place? What's the point of putting money in a 401k or an IRA, 403b, simple IRA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, one of the reasons, particularly with 401ks, is the company that you work for gives you money to do that. They match it to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
But you get free money, so that's kind of cool.
Yes.
Right? And I think most of us would say, don't turn down the free money.
Right, right.
But beyond that, should you put money into these accounts? Right? That's the most basic question. And I think the collective wisdom from everybody, we've been so indoctrinated, is yes, absolutely. We should maximize the amount we're putting in these accounts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And here's kind of an illustration. This is an example here of a surgeon who's, making a mere $900,000 a year. But, just for example,
Right.
not everybody's at that level. But this person, I guess, works in California, and he's got 37% federal, and he's got estate stack instead of taxes. Didn't quite get that right. And it's got him compounding this money at over 20 years at 6%. So pretty modest growth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it shows that the value of his retirement account is $7 million, whereas if he had invested that outside of a retirement account, it would be just under $5 million.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. And the idea is, and the quote here is, you got to invest the government's money for decades. The taxes that you would have otherwise paid the government, you got to compound that
Right.
tax deferred inside this retirement account.
Right.
So in that sense, that's nice. Now, what this chart does not show you is now what? When you
Right.
take the money out, what's going to happen? Okay.
And the idea, of course, the theory is that you won't have a $900,000 income anymore. You may have zero income, so
Yeah.
you won't be in a high tax bracket, and that's why you keep it in this 401k, for instance.
That's right. And so here's the example, Randy, of how it can work beautifully. Okay. So they call this the bird strategy. So he was a couple retiring. The surgeon, I guess, has now reached 58 years old, and he's decided he's going to delay his Social Security and his pension. Of course, at 58, you can't really get Social Security, but if he has a pension, he'd delay that. And so you spend money out of your IRA accounts or your 401k, whatever it is. Okay. And so you're in a position where you're in a low tax bracket now.
Right.
And you're taking money out. You've deferred it at 50% rates, and now you get to take it out in the 20s. And that's beautiful. And it bridges you to this point where maybe Social Security kicks in, maybe there's a pension, and it results in smaller required minimum distributions later in life where you might pay higher taxes. So therefore you're paying lower taxes over the whole period.
Right.
This is the ideal, and this is what people sort of expect when they save money to retirement accounts. Unfortunately, for most people, it doesn't work out this way.
Okay.
Right. But still, it's not a bad default.
Right.
And I guess part of the reason too is that we've been so sort of indoctrinated in this idea is that the powers that be, whether in government or academics, said, oh my gosh, we have a savings problem in the United States. We need to find a way to get people to save for the future. Here's how we're going to encourage it. So if the alternative of this, while this is not perfect, if the alternative is not saving at all, then this is far better.
Yeah, that reminds me of my not my first profession, but the first professional certification that I tried to get was as a life insurance agent. And so you have all, what they were, I never actually ended up selling, but the life insurance guys, they want to sell you either on the idea of forced savings or quasi-forced savings by putting into some kind of a life insurance policy that generates a future asset, or they want you, when you are going to divest that asset and cash it in, to go to an annuity. And these are, again, kind of maybe good defaults if you're not planning to do anything about managing your money. Would that be just kind of what you're saying here? If you're not going to do anything more interesting, these are default approaches.
I think that's safe to say. And of course, it doesn't apply to anybody who watches your channel.
Right, exactly.
Right. But for maybe the population at large who
Right.
don't give a thought to any of these things at all and don't even really know what a stock or a bond is.
A lot of corporations and other places that pay people will have a meeting. You go to a meeting when you're retiring, and in the meeting, they're going to recommend annuities.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this, I asked my AI friend to sort of say, okay, when does this work? Beyond this bridge case. Well, it came back with this, and I find this really quite amusing.
Okay.
So here's an efficient withdrawal strategy.
Okay.
So you retire, and if you can, you take money out of your brokerage account first. It says, if it exists.
Right, right.
Nowhere along the way, 20, 30, 40 years ago, did we tell people, oh, you also want to save money to a brokerage account? We've been telling people, put money in your 401k, max it, and then most people assume that that's all they need to do.
Right.
And they can spend the rest. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the years where it's like, oh, I didn't realize I could save money outside of my retirement accounts. And now the most efficient strategy is to say, take the money from there first. But there doesn't exist for many people. They haven't done this. They put all their savings, and I can't tell you how many people I've met where all of their savings is in retirement accounts. And kudos to them. I'm not disparaging them in any way. They saved a ton of money to these accounts, and they've maximized the opportunity in every way they can. They've got 401k, and they've got other types of retirement accounts on the side that they've been able to put money in through the years. They've got all these different retirement accounts, but they have almost no savings outside of these tax deferred accounts. And now the most efficient strategy for getting money out of the retirement accounts is to take money out of your brokerage account first.
Right, right.
Anyway,
Yes.
that aside, okay. The idea is that you want to fill your lower brackets annually with the IRA withdrawals. if you can. Delay Social Security to age 70.
Right.
Some people have different feelings about that. Some people aren't sure if it's going to be around.
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe you want to take the money while it's there before it's gone.
So two things on that real quick. Number one, the average for the if you were to invest the money reasonably, this is according to Social Security, okay? They say 81 is the break even. So if you take it out at 65, 66, as opposed to 70, if you take it out, you have to live to be 81 for the taking it out at age 70 to have benefited you. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some complexity with that too, but generally, yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course there's this idea of, well, why don't you do conversions along the way and during the low years?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't have a brokerage account to be able to fund your needs and you're taking out money out of your retirement account, then there is no low year to do any conversions.
Right.
So again, another idea that this can't be executed upon if you don't have some flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, when you do the conversion, where are you going to pay the tax from on the conversion?
Yeah.
Because the conversion is like withdrawing money from your retirement account, paying tax on it, and putting the after-tax proceeds in a Roth, essentially. Or you can withdraw the entire amount and put it in the Roth, but then you've got to come up with the tax money from somewhere else.
Right.
If you don't have a brokerage account, where's that tax
Mm-hmm.
money going to come from? Unless you've just been saving in a bank account or something.
Right.
So anyway, the kind of the efficient withdrawal strategy sort of goes out the window because we haven't been talking to people about all these other components over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, okay. This one's kind of interesting. You have the client there in the upper left. Client passes away. And this is kind of a weird example, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about. They have a $4 million in a traditional IRA, okay, retirement account, and then they have $4 million in a brokerage account. They did save money in two places.
Right.
Okay. They give their IRA account to their son, who is a surgeon. In this case, the surgeon's only earning $800,000, so he's earning less than the other one.
He's just younger. Yeah.
Maybe just younger. Okay. Yeah. And then the kid B is a teacher, and she's earning $70,000 a year, and she gets the taxable account.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this person, in his or her infinite wisdom, thought this was a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the surgeon now is forced to take out withdrawals over the next 10 years, taxed at his high tax rate. So his after-tax inheritance, you can see, is a small pile of money, Randy. Right? This is not the scale.
Right.
And the teacher, she gets a step up in basis on those stocks.
Right.
So she basically gets to keep the full $4 million.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So while you were intending to treat your kids as equally, on an after-tax basis, they didn't.
Right.
Now, this is extreme because what's more likely to happen is you give each of them half of each of these.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But even there, then again, the after-tax number wouldn't be the same. The surgeon would be paying more on the IRA. So you've got to think about that too in terms of what are my heirs' tax situations.
Right.
And is there a way that I can try to equalize that? If you even care about that, you may not even care.
Yes, yeah. Right.
Okay. So the alignment strategy here is name lower income heirs as IRA beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
And give appreciated assets to higher earners, like the flip side of what's shown here.
Right. Huh.
So just something to think about. If there happens to be anybody out there that's kind of divvying up their assets in this kind of way, and you have children that are very different income levels,
Right.
which a lot of people do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something to think about.
Well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Here's another example. And this, these illustrations look really fancy, don't they?
They are. They're just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for them. All right. This is another example here where they gave the IRA to the kids here on the left.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And the kids get the IRA and they pay ordinary income tax on the distributions. And they gave a bunch of money to charity. And they thought that giving appreciated stock to the charity made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The charity receives full value. They avoid capital gains tax. But as it says here, this is a missed opportunity. The charity wouldn't pay capital gains tax anyway,
Anyway,
right? So instead, you should give the IRA to charity because the charity doesn't pay income tax on that IRA like your heirs will. They get the full value. And you should give the appreciated stock to the kids because they get a step up in basis.
right,
As long as your total estate is less than 30 million for a married couple or 15 million for an individual.
right, right, right. Okay.
So again, a lot of complexity to this, but just one key principle to think about in terms of what assets to give to whom and what the tax consequence of that might be.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, very specific examples.
Very, very specific and as you point out, very complex.
Yeah. Now let's talk about appreciated stock for a second. Let's say you've got a whole bunch of Tesla stock and you say, okay, I bought this for $500,000 and it's now worth 5 million. If I die, my heirs get it. They get a step up in basis. All is great.
Mhm.
Well, you want to be careful of this idea of the tax tail wagging the dog, right? So yes, you get a step up in benefit on taxes and you
Mhm.
avoid capital gains taxes, but you haven't dealt with the concentration that you might have in one investment. I'm
Mhm.
using Tesla as an example. It could be
Sure.
any company, any investment. It could be real estate, it could be business, right? And is diversification necessary in your situation? What happens if something bad happens to Tesla? Does that put any of your financial future in jeopardy by having such a concentrated position in one company?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, again, you may be very comfortable with that, and that's fine,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And you know, we've all done a lot of work on Tesla. We understand the company very well. But substitute this then for another company, substitute it for Microsoft stock or something that might be more at risk perhaps over the next 10 years.
Mhm.
Okay. So some people try to solve for the tax side of the equation and then they forget that they've still, they're still opened up in terms of the concentration risk.
Right. Right.
Okay. Here's a fun one. There's a geographic arbitrage opportunity. And it's funny here that the AI just happened to pick these two states. I find it kind of amusing. So let's say you're working in California and you're, high earnings years, right? High income.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're putting money into retirement account and you're deferring taxes at maybe, you're paying a 50% tax rate combined.
Yeah.
So you're putting money in, you're saving the 50%, you're getting that tax deferred growth on that money. But then you retire to a lower tax state and it happened to pick Texas, right? And now your withdrawals are taxed at 24%.
Hmm.
So it's a lower federal bracket, and there happens to be no state income tax in places like Tennessee and Florida and
Yeah.
Texas,
Yeah.
right? So you earn the money in California, you deferred the tax there, you retire in Texas, you've arbitraged
Yeah.
geography.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
And as my AI friend says, this is one of the strongest real world arguments for deferral.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
So,
Never would have thought of that one.
yeah. So something to think about. I'm sure a lot of people have thought about it. And in my experience in living to Florida, there were plenty of people that had moved there from California
Or
and
from
New York.
New York, of course, that's
Yeah.
famous that people retire in Florida from New York. But I always thought it was the weather, not the tax advantage.
Well, it could be both. Yeah. They do pick up some extra risks like being eaten by an alligator and things like that, but
Things like that. Yeah.
the weather and taxes seem to
Hurricanes. Yeah.
rank higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's say your goal is not to maximize the money you leave for your kids, but you also have some charitable intentions.
Hmm.
So here, saving money to a pre-tax account actually can be great because you get that tax deferred growth on that money that you put in pre-tax, right? Because the money that you leave to the charity is zero tax anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to focus on that if that's your objective. And I've seen many clients over the years where they do have some pretty large charitable desires.
Hmm.
And so these kinds of account types can make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And this, of course, comes down to that whole argument on X that so many progressives like to make that Elon should give away his money now. Very few people think that the charity is going to be more likely to invest the money as well as Elon Musk can, or maybe even as well as you or I can while we're alive. So we're basically increasing the amount that we can provide the charity at death by getting a good ROI while we're alive.
Yeah, and the thing too, and I wrote a post about this idea, is that Elon is a person that's doing a lot to change humanity,
Right.
um, in my view, in many, many good ways. Even if you just look at autonomous driving, if it saves lives,
Hmm.
to the extent he's successful with that, that may be a bigger impact than any money he could give away.
Sure. That too.
And also, I think you need to judge somebody's charitable giving over their lifetime. To
Hmm.
compare Elon Musk to Warren Buffett wouldn't be appropriate. Warren's at a different phase in his life
Hmm.
than where Elon is, and even Bill Gates, frankly.
Sure.
But I think someone like Elon, who's a builder, can do a lot more with that and change humanity for the good without, just giving money to charity. We need to make sure we don't have this preconceived notion that charities are the only institutions that do good in the world,
Right. Right.
right? And in fact, many people have argued that don't do good. They've got the wrong objectives.
Yep.
Um, and again, that's going to depend on your viewpoint about different things. But yeah, okay. There's also something, Randy, called the widow's penalty.
Mm.
So you're a couple before death over here on the left side, 67, retired. You've got $4.2 million in an IRA. You've got 800,000 in a taxable account and 300,000 in a Roth. So you got money in three different buckets.
Hmm.
That sounds good. You've got Social Security of 78,000 combined, and you're spending 240,000 a year. Okay. So while you're both alive, you're taking money out of the IRAs, 120,000 a year. You've got taxable income of 180. So the IRA plus the part of the Social Security that's taxed, and you're paying an effective tax rate of 18%. Okay. But suddenly, in this case, the husband passes away. Her Social Security now is 42,000, and this is assuming her spending is still 220.
Mm.
I don't know about your family, Randy, but my wife spends all the money. I don't spend a dime. In fact, without me, she might spend more.
Right.
Anyway, forgive the example here, but I think it's still instructive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now she's got to take out more money out of her IRA to
Mm.
fund her spending needs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the taxable income now is $230,000, and
Hmm.
she's now in the single tax. She's not married filing joint anymore. It's in the single filer, and she's now in the 32% tax bracket.
Mm.
Right. So that's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about is what happens if one passes, how that impacts their taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this case, it's saying that, over result might result in 600 to $1 million more in taxes over her lifetime.
Mm.
So these are all things to be to think about. And you can see how this complicates matters
Yes.
because in most relationships, both people don't die at the same time.
True. True.
And some people find that one of their spouses dies earlier than they expected. And right, so this could be a big impact for some people.
Yeah, and let's be honest. It's usually the man. First of all, we still have a situation where men are typically older than their wives. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know that that's changing in the Z gen. But so the men are older and frailer apparently because the women are living about 2 to 3 years longer than men still. And that's without any kind of war impact that we've had in previous centuries. It's just a matter of for whatever reason we go faster. So typically it's going to be this direction. And again, this is something that I didn't even think about until I was probably in my early 70s. Was okay, how do I arrange this in a way that is going to be the best possible outcome
Yeah.
for a surviving spouse?
Yeah, it can be a challenging situation.
Yeah.
I do like the fact here that the AI was sensitive enough or emotionally intelligent enough to
Mhm.
know that she should be a little bit sad. Here she's quite happy. It would be funny if that face had continued over on this side. So
Uh,
AI seems to be Learning, Randy.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Okay. So now let's shift over to the
Okay.
Roth IRA,
Right.
right? And this idea of perhaps converting money to it.
Right.
And again, we did a whole show on this, so we're not going to belabor the details and the points on all this.
Hmm.
Okay. So you can think though of the Roth as a hedge against future tax rate changes.
Okay.
Okay. So if in the say in the early 60s, you do a conversion at relatively low rates, and 10 years later, future tax rates go way up, you'll be happy that you did.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Now, again, there's no guarantee that Roth assets are insulated from higher rates. I guess the government could say, well, you got the benefit of those low rates, and now we're going to put on a, surtax.
Right. Right.
There's always that risk.
Sure.
Okay. Um, Also, inflation pushes up nominal income up. So you get this bracket creep. If the tax brackets don't go up by the sort of the inflation impact on income, you might find yourself in a higher tax bracket,
Hmm.
even though you're not really earning any more money because it's
Right.
just inflation putting your income
Tax
up,
bracket. Hmm.
right? So it helps to neutralize that issue. Um, so anyway, there's just some different things here that the Roth can help potentially protect against. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and here's an example of this. If your adult children are richer than the parents, right, you can converting at the parents' low rate, and the
Hmm.
kids are getting the money at, if it'd be a high rate. So if they had received an IRA for inheritance and they had to take the money out,
Right.
they'd be paying income tax at their high rate
Hmm.
for 10 years. Whereas with the Roth, then they get the benefit of that
Hmm. Hmm.
tax-free inheritance.
Right. Right. So
Okay.
remind me, because maybe others are having the same question right now. So in a traditional retirement, like a 401(k) or whatever, you put the money in tax free. You then can trade your stocks and whatever
I would say pre-tax, Randy. It's before it's taxed.
before
Yeah,
tax. Okay. And you put them, and now you can play stocks or whatever you want to do in that account, and you're not paying any concurrent taxes on those gains.
correct.
And then you just merely pay the tax, whatever it is, when you take it out. All right.
Yep.
With the Roth IRA, you're putting the money in after tax. What happens to the gains during those years? Is that also tax-free when you take it out?
Tax-free during the years that it's invested in the Roth and tax-free when it comes out.
Okay. So even the gains are tax-free.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Under current
Correct.
laws.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the question of do you want to pay the tax now
Hmm. Hmm.
and have tax-free gains and withdrawals later?
Right.
Or do you want to defer the tax now and get more money into the account,
Hmm.
compounding tax deferred, and then I'll deal with the taxes later?
Right. Right.
If you're absolutely sure that your tax rate in the future is going to be lower than what you're paying now, then this is a good deal.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
problem is it's pretty hard to be sure about that.
Sure.
Okay. Particularly if you have a very successful investment, like we're hoping with companies like Tesla and others, right? If you're a very successful investor and you're investing in an IRA, you could be creating a massive tax bill for yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Good problem to have.
Yeah. Good problem. Yeah.
I wish that upon everybody.
Yeah. And again, we're also talking about the next step on this particular show, which is the disposition of the money after death.
Yeah.
You know, that's another impact. And again, to restate what I stated in the beginning, in your 50, I believe a lot of people in their 40s and 50s think they're going to spend all the money. I really think they do. I still
Mhm.
think that's true today. That people are like, oh, I don't have to worry about inheritance. My kids will do fine. They'll be doing great. My grandkids will be doing great. And so I don't have to worry about that. And I'll just spend it all. For the people that you're talking about that have these kind of incomes or these kinds of wealth accumulations in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, you cannot spend. I mean, you can spend it all, but you're going to spend it on other assets. You're going to spend it
Yeah.
on jewelry and property and other things. You still have the same problem when you come to the inheritance.
Yeah. I guess my AI helper thought that these two were so important, did it twice.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Here it says inflation pushes nominal income up, and here it says, well, in the little chart here, It says inflating distributions gross. Imagine if FSD makes the same kind of errors that
We talked about that the other day.
these models do. We'd be in trouble, wouldn't we?
We would.
Anyway, we get the message, I think, even if there's a few typos.
Yep, yep.
Okay, but this one is actually interesting with, if you have children that are super successful and making lots of money, then, saving your money into an IRA is I guess not a bad thing. The problem is when you're starting to do that in your 30s and 40s, do you know how your kids are going to turn out? You don't. I'm sorry, this is the Roth.
Okay.
This is the Roth situation. Yeah. So when you're starting to save and you're putting money into retirement accounts, if you know for sure that your future kids are going to make a ton of money, then you want to save to a Roth.
It's interesting too. The Bible has a verse. I won't be able to quote the verse, but it talks about giving the money to your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough. So so you'll even at death, you may not know how well your grandchildren are going to do, as opposed to your children may have already made their bones, and you know that they're fine.
Yeah, and I've seen some situations where parents thought their kids were going to be fine and they gave the money to the grandkids, but their kids actually needed the money
I gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
more than the grandkids did.
yeah.
Or in the case of the grandkids, maybe the grandkids didn't turn out so well,
Right, right,
and they regret their decision giving all the money to the grandkids when they really wish they would have given it to their own children.
right.
So there's all kinds of things like that
Hmm.
can kind of mess up plans. Roth conversions are great, but here's one situation where they're not. This is called liquidity failure from optimization.
Hmm.
So if we start on the left, you did a Roth conversion, right? You took the money for a retirement plan, you converted it. You have to come up with the taxes. You have an immediate tax payment due now.
Right.
Okay. So you might have drained your cash reserves to pay the taxes.
Hmm.
All right. But then, sometime later, it's like, oh my gosh, I need this money for something else. And you don't have the cash. So you're forced to sell the assets, and it could also be poorly timed. It could be at a time when the market's down. Maybe that's why you need the cash, is because the market went down and there's some issue. You need to put more money in your business or something. All right. So a forced sale from, potentially a Roth account that's kind of a double whammy.
Oh, and it's not like this is something that we don't all have a memory of. 2007, 2008 threw a complete wrench into my uh, retirement plans and my future in terms of my assets. And I think a lot of other people in that 2007, 8 also got creamed and had to completely change their approach.
Yeah. There's examples from that period where banks canceled home equity lines of credit.
Right.
And people said, okay, what do you want me to do? And the bank says, oh, we want you to pay us.
Yeah, right.
And the person said, with what money?
Yeah.
Right. And so there again, you're dipping into whatever reserves you have to satisfy the bank's demands. They can't make you like pay off your mortgage, but the home equity line of credit, they can yank that.
Yeah.
So there are certain situations that come up. Yeah. And normally you wouldn't have to worry about this, but occasionally there's a crisis and
Right.
suddenly, you've got to come up with a bunch of money.
Mhm.
The other thing, we talked about this a minute ago, but this idea of this Roth policy shift. So in the future, future government, a future administration could add RMDs to Roths. Now, it wouldn't be taxable necessarily, but they would still maybe require you to take the money out.
Right.
And that might reduce the full benefit of having money in a Roth. Or they could impose a surtax
Yeah.
for some reason.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
They could just simply say, we need the money, we're going to tax you.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be any reason.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So the idea then that doing these conversions for the long term may be less compelling because of some future change in policy.
Yeah, and anybody out there that is going, oh no, they're not going to do that. We right now have conversations nationally as well as in California about wealth taxes. I don't think 20 years ago anybody was thinking there was going to be even a conversation about wealth taxes.
Yeah.
where you'll be taxing a person's gains that are unrealized,
Yeah.
which is, crazy talk to me. But then again, what do I know?
No, it's crazy talk, and I think the Dutch were about to do that, and they pulled back from the brink.
Right.
So that's a good sign.
Hmm.
But yeah, it would be disastrous. Um, okay, so then this idea that Roth conversions are not free, right? They're purchased with an upfront tax.
Hmm.
So the question is, does it make sense?
Hmm.
And we talked about, if you've got to pay with money. So if you're pulling away from your liquidity or other investable assets, it may or may not be the best choice.
Hmm.
Particularly if there's, something that happens later.
Hmm.
And, if you're paying the tax from IRA assets, then, you've reduced the compounding advantage. You've taken capital away that was growing tax deferred, and part of that now you've paid tax with. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
may or may not, depending on what you're investing the money in.
Sure.
Okay. So there's some math that can be done here to sort of see whether it makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay. This was kind of a busy chart, but anyway. Okay. Now let's talk about saving money outside of IRAs and 401ks and Roth accounts. And I'm actually a big proponent of this idea because now you have much more flexibility over your investments on many different levels than you do if you're saving in these tax deferred, tax exempt structures.
Hmm.
And we haven't talked about, in these retirement accounts, you can't take money out until you're 59 and a half and all the different issues around that. There's all these restrictions. What happens if you want to retire at 55?
Hmm.
Well, you can do it. You can do what's called 72T distributions, and there's ways of doing it, but they have their complications. Once you do that, you're stuck in that. You can't then change it the next year. You've got to continue
Right.
at least until you're 59 and a half. Okay. There's nothing stopping people, though, from just saving to a regular brokerage account, an individual account, a joint account, a TOD or transfer on death account,
Hmm.
where if one person dies, it automatically goes to the next person. These structures can make a lot of sense for many reasons. One of the reasons is that upon your death, you potentially could get a step up in basis. Your heirs get to receive that stock stepped up to the current value.
Right.
That is pretty powerful.
Right.
The estate tax exemption for individuals is 15 million right now. For married couples, it's $30 million.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's pretty cool to be able to give your kids up to $30 million of money tax free.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And we've seen plenty of Tesla investors that have put a small amount of money into the stock and have become massively wealthy.
Right.
So that's fantastic. Okay. So you don't have that in any retirement account. Okay.
So, just for fun, this is I'm sorry, it's just a side item. To a certain extent, it might make sense to have your money in a Roth or some kind of a retirement account if you're playing the market, if you're doing lots of ins and outs.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. And where you don't want to have that money necessarily outside of a pension account.
What you're referring to is if you make a lot of trades in your brokerage account,
Right.
you're going to be paying a lot of short-term
Right.
capital gains, which are taxed at income tax rates.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that could be pretty punitive if you're doing that a lot.
Right.
Now, there are some trading strategies that automatically are 60/40 treatment, 60% long-term and 40% short-term.
Hmm.
So that's better, but still, it's a drag.
Hmm.
So I guess what I'm speaking to here more is the long-term investor that's intending to buy something and hold it for as long as they possibly can, or as long as makes sense.
Right.
Right? The Tesla investor, ideally, right?
Hmm.
Somebody wants to hold the stock, hopefully forever,
Hmm.
but at least the next 10 or 20 years. But yes, there are other considerations for why you might want to put money into some kind of tax deferred account
Hmm.
if you're a trader. Absolutely. Yep, good point. Okay, here's another reason, and I apologize for this chart. It's a little busy. I'll walk you through it. So you've got a long-term holder, okay? And the AI refers to this as strategic wealth management. Fancy term.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've got a growth-oriented portfolio. They've got public company stock, could be private, but we got public company stock, and let's say there's a $12 million gain in this portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know what the value of the portfolio is, but $12 million gain. Okay. So what you could do is to fund your ongoing living expenses. Let's say if you didn't have retirement accounts,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you could sell some of your stock every year.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a guy with a giant pair of scissors, and he's trimming off parts of his portfolio, and he's paying taxes as he goes. Okay, not a bad way to do it, right? You're selling off some of your capital, you're spending that. Other ways to do it are, you've heard Bradford Ferguson particularly talk about covered call strategies,
Right.
right? Where you're going to sell the stock anyway, but why not in the meantime try to earn a little bit of extra income? And if
Mm-hmm.
the stock gets called away from you, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to sell it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's fine. You can do that too. Here's another idea that may or may not make sense is you can borrow against your portfolio via a pledged asset line or a margin account for liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the idea is that you don't sell anything. Okay. You're holding your assets into your estate and you're accumulating maybe a balance of debt, but hopefully your investment is hopefully growing faster than the debt's increasing.
Right. Right.
It's bad news when your debt's increasing faster than your
Right.
assets going up. That can be trouble. Okay. And then when you pass, your gain is wiped clean, as it says here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, and your heirs get this tax-free appreciation of your assets,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't sold anything.
And this is apparently, I've even commented this on X that this is being used by a lot of ultra wealthy people. They're taking 100% of their needs by borrowing against their stocks or their whatever it might be. And so they're avoiding taxes altogether, even though they would normally be in a high tax bracket.
Yeah.
And I've commented on X that this is one place where I might be aligned with progressives, that there's maybe should be a limit on this, or maybe there should be, some kind of a tax requirement if this is again under maybe some kind of limitations, that people should have to pay tax on these kind of approaches.
I'll leave that up to others.
Right.
I just work with the here and now and what's on
Okay.
the
All
on the
right.
plate. Um,
Right.
I think there's pros and cons to all these things.
Mhm.
I think you can make the argument about why do we have tax deferred accounts in the first place,
Right.
right? Why do we have a Roth structure? Why do we allow this? Why do we allow that?
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to point fingers and say, well, that doesn't apply to me, but that sure seems like a good deal for those people. Why does Peter Thiel, why does he get to have billions in his Roth IRA account?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think there's some risk of sort of pointing fingers and saying that
Sure.
doesn't seem
Sure.
fair, but
Yeah.
if the shoe was on the other foot, we might feel differently about it.
Very much. Yeah.
Um, all these structures have been created for a reason. There was somebody that lobbied for it, somebody thought it was a good idea,
Hmm.
but here's what we have at our disposal now.
Right.
This is something I think that a lot of people, particularly Tesla investors, may not be using to their full advantage.
Hmm.
And I'll share with you towards the end another way to kind of amplify this. Um, but there's some considerations here. You want to make sure that your margin amount is not so much that if there's volatility in Tesla, you get a margin call.
Hmm.
And if you have no way of paying that off, that can be a problem. So you've got to make sure that the amount that you borrow is sized properly relative to the assets you have.
Right.
And then, of course, you want to do this with assets where you think can grow faster than what the margin amount's increasing,
Sure.
right? And it's not just the margin rate that you're paying, but it's also your ongoing borrowing.
Right.
So you might have a nice low margin rate. Let's say it's 5% or whatever. If you're borrowing 10% more a year, then your asset has to grow up 15% in order to have escape velocity.
Exactly.
Otherwise, there'll be some implosion at some point. So lots of different considerations there too.
Yep.
Okay. All right. The article talked about asset location in addition to asset allocation. Again, asset allocation is the decision between where you invest in stocks and bonds and cash and real estate, right? How you allocate the assets and how you divide them up. That's what most people think about when they invest. Typically, when people say, oh, I'm a conservative investor, then they're saying, well, I want more in bonds and more in cash. People will say, I'm an aggressive investor, they want more in stock. I don't like those terms because you can't really define, like your aggressive, Randy, might be my conservative.
Right.
So they're not very good terms. But asset location. The idea behind this is which account do I put those investment choices in?
Right.
Okay. So we've got three different buckets there on the bottom. We've got taxable accounts like a brokerage account, a joint account. We've got IRAs. You could put in 401k, 403b, simple SEPs in that bucket, or Roth. These all have slightly different tax treatments, right? And I think we've discussed that, but we can review that here again if you'd like. So because they have different tax treatments, the question is which assets should go in which bucket? Okay. Now my AI friend here suggests that you should put your high growth equities in your taxable account. Why? If you have a big winner, then if you sell it, you're going to pay capital gains, which is a lower tax rate than income tax rates currently for people. If you had the high growth stock in an IRA and it comes out eventually when you take distributions out, you're going to pay income tax. So potentially that could be higher than capital gains taxes. But why not put your high growth equities in the Roth where it's never taxed? To me, that's a logical place for high growth assets.
Right.
So I'm not sure the AI has got it right here.
Okay.
I do agree with the middle one that if you have assets that pay income, like bonds and dividend paying assets, if those are generating taxable income to you, then you might want to shelter that inside an account that is tax sheltered, like an IRA or 401k. But what happens if you actually need that income?
Yeah.
Then that's the wrong place to put it. So you got to be thoughtful about, okay, I want to shelter taxes, but how am I going to get my hands on the income that's being produced? Oh, I can't.
And of course, your strategies could change over time. I think that's the point that we made a couple of months ago when we did the Roth conversion video. Is in your 30s you're super aggressive. In your 40s you might be starting to accumulate. In your 50s you might be starting to conserve. In your 60s you're now looking about distributions. So as you're going through life, your strategies might change. Which one of these placements make the best sense at different times in life? There might be, as you point out, a conversion may be something that is a good thing to consider based on just on a strategic change.
Yes. And then here's something that's happened quite recently that changes this whole thing in so many ways. And it also relates to our previous slide of the margin discussion. Okay. Here comes an asset. And this is one specific one. There are a bunch of them in this category.
Right.
So I'm not just focusing on this. And again, this is not investment advice. But here's an investment that is a preferred stock. It pays a high level of income. But the income is tax deferred. So if you held this in this first bucket, the taxable account, and you earned 11.5%, let's say that continued for the whole year, that income to you is not taxed. It's like having it sheltered in an IRA, but not sheltered. It's in your taxable account.
Right.
So now we actually have some investments now that you would say, well, okay, normally you'd put the high income stuff here, but this high income asset is not taxed in the year that you receive it. It's tax deferred income. What happens is every time they pay a dividend, your cost basis gets reduced by the dividend amount.
Yeah.
And over time, your cost basis goes to zero. At that point, two interesting things. The income, if you continue to receive it, would be taxed at long-term capital gains rates. Not bad. Or in the event of your death, there would be a step up
Step up.
in basis, right? So again, you think about this diagram, it's like, okay, where should this be put?
Right.
And it may make sense to put that here versus here, depending on if you need the income or not.
Right.
Okay. So there's some new investment opportunities out there now that have kind of turned
Right.
conventional wisdom on its head in many ways. Now, I said a minute ago, it also relates to this strategy. What happens if you can borrow it, let's say 5, 6%, and you can invest at 11.5?
Right.
Then shouldn't you do that all day long with as much money as you could?
Hmm.
You can be the bank, Randy,
Right. Right. Right.
right? JP Morgan gives you 1% on your savings account and they charge you 24% on your credit card. Why not borrow at 5 or 6 and earn 11.5,
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
right? And then on this deal, if there's a margin call, you simply sell the security that you invested earning 11.5, you pay off the margin, no
Hmm.
problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
So anyway, there's some interesting things that have happened in sort of recent months,
Right.
literally just last few months,
Right.
that have kind of given people some additional opportunities over what we've had before.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, that's food for thought.
Sure.
There's a
Sure.
lot more we could talk about on that topic, but hopefully we haven't confused everybody so much that they're like their heads just completely spinning.
So,
Um,
I think, CERN, the main thing that I took away from all that is that we should eliminate the income tax. It's
yeah,
the rules and strategies that have been created by lawyers and
yeah.
CPAs and whatnot in order to avoid income tax is as good a reason as I've ever heard for eliminating income tax and just having a consumption tax in its place, which would be, let people invest their money in the way that it's the most logical, as opposed to with all these complicated ways to avoid taxes.
Well, once we have more humanoid bots in the world than people, we won't need any taxes.
That's right. Yeah.
The bots will produce everything that we need and
Right.
so on. So
Yeah. In the age of abundance. So
in
all,
the age of abundance.
as Elon says, don't save any money for retirement. I
Yeah.
don't think that was the best advice he's ever given. It's like, okay, Elon, you've got this view of the future, but you're giving investment advice in terms of not investing your money into a pension. Could
Yeah,
be,
I would go out on a limb there to say that that's not something that I would concur with at this point in time. I understand where he's coming from,
I get it. I get it.
but I don't feel confident to tell people right now that you can live like it's 1999 and not worry about anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully Elon's right,
Yeah.
but I would much rather have the hedge of saying, okay, I've got this pile of capital that's useless in this new world
Right. Right.
versus, oh, I have nothing and I should have saved because I thought abundance was going to take care of me and it didn't.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking the other day, on a completely different subject, but um, this situation reoccurred to me again just now. There was one of these online videos. They suck you in, by saying it's the end of the world, and then it's an hour and a half video where they take forever to get to the point, and you're like, come on, come on, come on. And somebody says, was it Ray Dalio? I said, well, I might have been, but I can't remember. Anyway, so it was the end of the world is coming because of all the debt. But as you go through the video, there was no solution.
Yeah.
No solution. It was like housing prices are going to go down, gold is going to go down, silver is going to, it's like stocks are going to go down. And I keep waiting for a way out. What should I invest my money in? Figuring that they're going to, and they never did. It was so weird. Never gave a solution except, you know, uh, uh, pay so much a month to get our solutions in the future.
Oh,
But
yes.
but I was like,
Yeah.
give me at least one crumb here. Maybe I should go put all, if I think that we're in a crisis with regard to the borrowing by the federal government, what is the one place maybe that has the best chance of surviving the crisis? And never did.
Well, the simple solution is to grow our way out of the problem.
Right.
And that's what Elon is firmly focused on.
Right.
and creating a world of amazing abundance.
Mhm, mhm.
And if we can achieve that, then all of our financial problems are solved.
That's right.
It's that simple.
It's just, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elon.
I'll leave it to Elon to work out the details, but I've solved the problem.
Yes, that's right.
We don't need taxes. We don't need UBI. We don't need any of this stuff. You
Yeah,
just print money, give it to the people, they spend it,
it's
no
all
problem.
good. It's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah. All right. Well, and some of the fun stuff that we talked about in the book on AI rising is, we might be back to the 50s and 30s and 40s growing food in our backyards. But somebody with a black thumb like me who kills plants rather than growing them, my robot, my Optimus, will be able to do the job for me and be the best farmer ever.
Yeah. Or you and Optimus could garden together. That might be a pastime that you can partake together
Right. That's right. I
with
can't wait.
Optimus training you along the way.
Can't get wait to get my hands in the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
And
think we all might find some interesting things to participate in that we don't feel confident in doing so now.
right, my Optimus as coach, we talk about that in the book
Yeah,
as well as one of the ways that Optimus, most people don't think about Optimus in this way, but he would be the best coach ever in
that's
any
right.
subject. And now
Any
you could,
subject.
and maybe you'd be able to say, Optimus, I want you to be a harsh coach. I want you to drive me like crazy to to Olympic levels, or I'm just in this for fun. So coach me to be the best at Little League. Um, you know,
Optimus will likely be smart enough to know how you should be coached,
there you go.
whether you need a drill sergeant
Yeah,
or maybe a little bit of a softer guiding hand.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But ultimately Optimus should be able to be any personality you want it to be.
that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to at least some of this coming true. The sooner the better. CERN, as always, great to have you on explaining some of these things to us in such a way as that we know less now than we did when we started. So
You're welcome.
we have much greater knowledge and have complete confusion about what to do with that knowledge because there's so many possible trapdoors and possible benefits if we choose correctly. But that may be why some people would want to give you a call and talk about it in more detail. Not that this is not a commercial for
No,
some,
no,
but
it's not. I think our objective here was to talk about maybe some more general sort of financial
right,
concepts.
right.
And again, maybe today we did a great job muddying the waters. And maybe we can focus even more a little bit on some of the issues. But what I wanted to show though too is that how many things are just interrelated,
Right.
right? Um, Even something as simple like, and one of the articles I looked at was the importance of getting estate documents,
Yeah.
right? So if something happens to you,
Yeah.
the people that you want to receive money receive it, or if it's a medical situation, then the right people are in place to make
Oh, yes.
decisions on your behalf. But there's all kinds of pros and cons there too. Like we could do a whole show about that, and perhaps we will,
Yeah.
right? And of course, one of the things is oftentimes the issue is not having the documents. It's people having them and then not updating them when life changes. They get a
100%.
divorce and
100%.
their ex-spouse is still listed on their retirement accounts
Right. Yes. Yes.
or
I'm
other.
actually going through one of those situations right now. We did a family trust a few years ago, and something changed in the family, and you got to go out and get a new document and get it notarized
Yeah,
and all the rest. But yeah, the benefits and even potential pitfalls of family trust. There are things about family trust that are not right for everybody, but for most people, it would be more important that they get a family trust than anything that we just talked about because the inheritance taxes could be greater than any of the rest of what we just talked about, especially
potentially. Yeah,
especially in California. Crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right,
So
sir. All right. Thanks again. And we'll do some more of these in the future. You folks seem to appreciate these, and so we're going to continue to do that. And to all of you, it's been great talking to you.
thanks, Randy.